Just a quick warning, guys, before listening to this episode. As we'll mention at the start, due to new equipment, there's some differences in sound. So there's parts where I'm going to come through louder. So just be aware to put your volume at a level that's comfortable for when I'm speaking, and prepare for the occasional aggressively loud laugh. I tried to keep it to a minimum, but there is a few. So that's just a pre-warning on this episode. Hopefully for the next one, it'll be a bit more balanced. So, enjoy.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Twisted Talks. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Josh.
And this is take 2 of recording, because this week we have headphones and
An extra microphone.
We're all set up and everything. And it's very weird hearing your own voice playing back to you. So the first time we recorded, I sounded like a robot. Josh got distracted, so
here's hoping that we get it properly this time.
Please bear with us.
So yeah, if you notice any, I suppose, slow moments or anything like that,
or if I sound like I am completely devoid of human emotion, that's why.
Hey Siri.
Yes, how can I help you? So, before we get into today's case, there's a massive trigger warning, because today we are covering Jeffrey Dahmer and all his fucked up shit. So with that being said,
buckle up or turn off.
Buckle up or turn off, folks. That's it. That's all we can say.
Yeah, because there's a lot to it. It's a very dense case. This is going to be a 2-parter.
Yes, so part 1 will be out.
Well, this one
will be out Monday, the 3rd of October. No, the 10th of October. And then you'll get the second part on the 17th of October. And then after that, we'll be returning to our usual rotation. So I'll be covering a case, and then Josh will be covering a case.
Then another giant case.
And then another giant case.
So Tanya's next case will actually be the Halloween day case, because that Monday's the 31st.
Okay, right. Yes. I did know that.
So, right. Jumping straight in, I'm starting obviously with childhood and early years, as you do with any serial killer.
As you do with anyone.
You know, it's all about development. Well, I suppose that brings up the nature versus nurture argument, but anywho, we'll keep that for later. Jeffrey Dahmer was he was born in Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee, Ohio.
Wisconsin, dear.
Oh, sorry. I'm Irish.
And I only knew that because I have it wrote in front of me.
Nice.
So he was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 21st, 1960. His parents were Joyce Annette and Lionel Herbert Dahmer, and Jeffrey was the first of 2 sons. Now, Joyce was of Norwegian and Irish ancestry, and Lionel was of German and Welsh ancestry. Now, Joyce was a teletype machine instructor, and Lionel was a Marquette University chemistry student, and he later became a research chemist. Now, there's mixed reports. There are sources that say Dahmer was deprived of attention as an infant, but other sources claim that Dahmer was doted on as an infant and toddler by both parents. His mother Joyce was also supposedly known to be tense, greedy for attention and pity, as well as argumentative with her husband and their neighbours. Now, as Dahmer began the 1st grade, Lionel's studies kept him busy and away from home a lot of the time. So, when he was home, his wife, Jeffrey's mother, demanded constant attention and spent an increasing amount of time in bed, as Joyce was a hypochondriac and had depression. Now, on one occasion, Joyce is known to have attempted suicide with Equinol, a medication used short-term to treat symptoms of anxiety and nervousness. Now, I don't know if it's in modern-day medicine it's only used short-term, and if it was maybe used long-term back then, or if it was also short-term then as well. But that's just like the modern description I got of what Equinol is.
I would assume whenever a medication is given for short-term use, so like here, if you're given Difene or Ponston or a heavy painkiller that's known to be highly addictive, then you're usually only given like 3 days of it.
Yeah, because they don't want it to cause a whole new problem.
Yeah, so maybe it's possible that the Equinol was a highly addictive medication and that's why it was short-term, or it could
have had side effects in the long term.
Yeah, or it could have been that they were hoping that it would be a short-term issue.
Yeah. So as a result of all of this, neither Joyce or Lionel devoted much time to their son, who later recollected that from an early age he felt, quote, unsure of the solidity of the family, unquote, recalling extreme tension as well as numerous arguments between his parents during his early years. Fine example there of my own voice distracting my pronunciation. So Dahmer had supposedly been an energetic and happy child, but became notably quiet after having a double hernia surgery not long before his 4th birthday. At elementary school, Dahmer was seen as quiet and timid. One teacher later said she had detected early signs of abandonment issues in Dahmer due to his father's absence and his mother's illnesses, the symptoms of which increased when his mother became pregnant with her 2nd child. Even so, Dahmer did have a small number of friends in elementary school. Now, the family moved to Doylestown in Ohio in October 1966, so Dahmer would have been about 6 at this stage, or turning 6 that year. It was the December of this year that Joyce gave birth, and Jeffrey was allowed to decide on the name of his new baby brother. Jeffrey chose the name David, and that same year Lionel earned his degree and had started working as an analytical chemist in the nearby, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Akron, also in Ohio. Now, from an early age, Dahmer began to have an interest in dead animals, don't they all?
As you do.
It is possible that this fascination could have begun when at 4 years of age, Jeffrey saw his father removing animal bones from beneath the family home. According to Lionel, Jeffrey was oddly thrilled by the sound the bones made and became preoccupied by animal bones, wait for this, which he initially called his fiddlesticks.
Oh! Mummy, Daddy.
Look at my fiddlesticks.
My fiddlesticks.
From time to time, Dahmer would then search beneath and around the family home for more bones.
For more fiddlesticks.
More fiddlesticks. And would explore the body of live animals to discover where their bones were located.
Normal pastime for a child.
Just a day in the life.
Yep.
Now in 1968, the family moved again. This time to Bath Township, Summit County, also in Ohio.
Okay.
Now this move was their 3rd in 2 years and 6th since Joyce and Lionel married, so they're moving a lot.
Yeah, it's not a lot of consistency for them or for their children.
So this, I suppose, where they moved to, stood in 1.5 acres of woodland, with a small hut being only a short walk from the house, and this hut was where Dahmer began to collect large insects, such as dragonflies and moths, as well as skeletons of small animals such as chipmunks and squirrels, and some of these remains were preserved in jars of formaldehyde and stored within the hut. And bear in mind that he was about 8 when they moved there.
Would simply throw the whole child out, throw the whole child away, start again, hope for a better version.
Shove him back in. He's not cooked yet.
He's not done.
He's not cooked yet. 2 years later, during a chicken dinner, Dahmer asked his father what would happen if the chicken bones were placed in bleach. And then obviously Lionel, believing this to be his son's scientific curiosity, because I suppose Lionel himself was a scientist or a chemist, showed Dahmer how to safely bleach and preserve animal bones. Dahmer then incorporated these preserving techniques into his bone collecting and also began to collect dead animals, including roadkill, which he would dissect and bury beside the hut, with skulls occasionally placed atop makeshift crosses. According to one friend, Dahmer had explained to him that he was curious how animals, quote-unquote, fitted together. On one occasion in 1975, so at roughly 15 years of age, Dahmer decapitated the remains of a dog before nailing the body to a tree and impaling the skull on a stick in the woodland behind his house. As a quote-unquote prank, he later invited a friend to view the display, claiming he had discovered the remains by chance.
You would not be my friend anymore.
No.
If you came to me and said, I found something cool in the woods, I'd expect you to show me a witch's coven or something. Something actually cool. Not a dead dog.
A defiled.
We would simply no longer be friends. I would not associate with you. You'd be done.
I wouldn't associate with myself.
Like... Just what he was doing to
animals. Yeah, but I want to know as well, is that the truth? Did he discover a dead dog or did he kill a dog and then do it? Well, no, because he cut its head off, but he claims that decapitated the remains of a dog. So I'm like, did he find the dog as roadkill? Or did he kill the dog and he's just saying that he discovered remains of a dog and then did that?
Do you see the look on my face right now? I expect this is not going to leave me for the rest of this case. Probably for the rest of this week.
Probably for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, like what he was doing to animals in general is horrible, but like anything to do with dogs just gets me.
Anything to do with any animal gets me, to be honest, 110%.
Dogs and cats especially just...
But I feel like for me it's because of the whole, I see every single animal as the same.
Yeah, whereas insects to me, no, they're not an animal.
Well, not so much insects, but I still try not to kill them. I try to catch them and get them out of the house. But I will if I have to.
Should have seen the size of the spider I squished last night.
And the one that was living in my room for God knows how long and bit me. I still have the fang marks on my wrist. Thank God we don't have venomous spiders. Well, actually, thank God it wasn't like a false widow or anything. Yeah, love a bit of gangrene.
You did. But anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, so there's only like one little bit before we move on to your... first part. So the same year Lionel had taught his son how to preserve animal bones, Joyce had began increasing her daily dose of equinal, laxatives and sleeping pills, further minimising her tangible contact with both her husband and children, because at this point there was David as well as Jeffrey. And that kind of concludes the like childhood and early years that I just tried to make into one word. And we move on to, what is it?
High school and adolescence.
Okay.
So, Dahmer attended Revere High School, and from freshman year he was seen as an outcast. By the time he was 14, he was drinking beer and quote-unquote hard alcohol.
I'm assuming that means top shelf, like whiskey,
so like vodka,
tequila,
gin.
You know, if he wasn't a raging murderous psychopath, we'd get on.
You know, alcoholism.
That's what I would drink.
So by the time he was 14, he was drinking beer and hard alcohol during the day, often hiding it in the jacket that he wore to school. One classmate asked him why he was drinking scotch in their morning history class, and Dahmer told him that it was his medicine. Staff prescribed, it's just my medicine.
No, that actually reminds me, that's like the time I brought a flask into school and it was 3/4 full of like absolute vodka and a little bit of Coke, and Coca-Cola, just to clarify. And I was just sitting there in maths class sipping away, and I actually asked one of the girls, I was like, do you want a drink? And they were like, what is it? I was like, water. And then obviously they were trying to hide their horror because the teacher was looking down.
Mr. Connolly.
It's a bad phase. For me, I think it was Miss Downey.
Probably.
But I liked Miss Downey. Shout out to Miss Downey.
I never had Miss Downey. So told him it was his medicine. Staff described Dahmer in his freshman year as polite and highly intelligent, but with average grades. He played tennis and he had a brief stint in the high school band. Dahmer became a class clown amongst his peers. He often staged pranks, which coined the term doing a Dahmer. I just had to take the headphones
Doing
off.
a Dahmer.
It was doing too much to me. Which coined the term doing a Dahmer. He would bleat, as in like a goat.
But like...
Bleh.
As you do.
Like a goat or a sheep. Those would be the only animals that I know of that bleat.
Bleat. I didn't even know that was a word until right now.
He would also simulate epileptic seizures or cerebral palsy at school and in local stores as part of his pranks. Because that's so funny.
It just sounds very linking back to the depravity and lack of attention in childhood. Yeah. So like he's calling them pranks when he gets caught out, but it seems to be a cry for some sort of attention.
Yeah. Sometimes he would carry these antics out in exchange for money so that he could buy alcohol.
Okay.
So like his classmates could pay him to disrupt class.
So
by pretending to be a ghost or pretending to be disabled, and he would use the money to buy alcohol. By 1977...
We've already got an addiction on hand here, like.
Yeah. So that was when he was about 14, like.
Yeah.
I had my first alcoholic drink at 14 and I was so traumatised that I didn't drink again for 2 years. By 1977, Dahmer's grades had declined so much that his parents actually hired a private tutor, but this had limited success. And in the same year, in 1977, his parents, who had attended counselling sessions in an attempt to save their marriage, both decided to divorce because they were continuing to argue frequently, and also Lionel discovered that Joyce had had a brief affair. Now I don't know if the affair was in 1977 September or
if he only found out about it then.
In September 1977, but they decided to divorce, and they told their sons that they wished to be amicable. A few weeks before Dahmer graduated high school in 1978, in May 1978, one of his teachers found him sitting close to the school's parking lot, drinking several cans of beer. When the teacher threatened to report him, Dahmer simply said that he was experiencing lots of problems at home and that the school's guidance counsellor was aware of them. That spring, his mother and younger brother David left home to live with relatives in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. But Dahmer, who had just turned 18, remained in the family home. His parents' divorce was finalised on July 24th, 1978, and Joyce was awarded full custody of David and alimony payments. Dahmer discovered that he was gay when he reached puberty. He didn't tell his parents. He don't think he told anyone. In his early teens, he had a brief relationship with another teenage boy, but it said that they didn't have sex. And Dahmer later admitted that he began fantasizing about dominating and controlling a completely submissive male partner in his early to mid-teens. Very young to be thinking of something like that. And that these sexual fantasies gradually evolved to him focusing on the chests and torsos of whoever the focus of his fantasy at that particular point in time was, which then gradually became intertwined with his absolute fascination with dissection and dissecting bodies. So that's kind of how all that came into play in terms of his sexual fantasies. And when he was around 16, Dahmer found himself attracted to this one particular male jogger. He began fantasizing about knocking this man unconscious and then, quote, making sexual use of his body. Dahmer hid himself in the bushes one day with a baseball bat, waiting for this man to pass by. But for whatever reason, on this particular day, the man never did. And Dahmer admitted later that this was his first attempt to attack and make an individual submissive to him. Your turn. It is your turn.
So then we're moving on to Jeffrey Dahmer's first murder. So he committed his first murder in 1978, only 3 weeks after his graduation. On the 18th of June, Dahmer picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Mark Hicks, who was almost 19 years old. Dahmer lured Stephen to his house under the idea they'd have drinks and, as far as I gather, nothing more, just a few drinks. Stephen had been hitchhiking to a rock concert at Chippewa Lake Park. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, in Ohio, and agreed to accompany Dahmer to his house upon the promise of a few beers, as I said. And he went with Dahmer because Dahmer had the house to himself. According to Jeffrey, the sight of Hicks standing bare-chested at the roadside stirred his sexual feelings, but when Hicks began talking about girls, Dahmer knew...
Sorry, that was my shoulder.
Dahmer knew that any sexual passes he made would be rejected. After hours of talking, drinking, and listening to music, Hicks wanted to leave, but Dahmer did not want him to. Dahmer bludgeoned Hicks with a 4.5 kg dumbbell. He later struck Hicks twice from behind with the dumbbell as Hicks sat upon a chair. When Hicks fell unconscious, Jeffrey strangled him to death with the bar of the dumbbell and then stripped the clothes from Hicks' body before exploring his chest with his hands, then masturbating as he stood above the corpse. The next day, Dahmer dissected Stephen's body in his basement. He later buried the remains in a shallow grave in his backyard, and weeks later he dug up the remains and skinned the flesh from the bones. He crushed the bones with a sledgehammer and scattered them in the woodland behind the family home.
Nice. That's pleasant.
So,
pleasant.
Just another... Well, not another, that was the first one, but I mean, ew. Like that poor person.
Yeah. And that was his first murder.
And he's already skinning and pulverizing bones and...
He's not testing the waters, he's diving headfirst.
Yeah. He's sink or swim, we're going.
Yeah.
And that is it on that section on the first murder.
Mm-hmm. So, getting into his... I'm going to take the headphones off again. Getting into his college and army service. So 6 weeks after Hicks's murder, Dahmer's father returned home with his new fiancée. I don't know why I pronounced father like that. His father returned home with his new fiancée, and they discovered that Jeffrey was living alone at the house. That August, Dahmer enrolled in Ohio State University. He was hoping to major in business, but because of his persistent alcohol abuse, he didn't do all that well in college. He got failing grades in Introduction to Anthropology, Classical Civilizations, and Administrative Science. He was successful in riflery, getting a grade of B-, but his overall GPA was 0.45 out of 4.0.
Okay.
At one point, his dad paid a surprise visit, only to discover that Dahmer's room was strewn with empty liquor bottles. And even though Lionel had paid in advance for Jeffrey's second term, Dahmer dropped out after just 3 months in college.
He was like, yeah, no, it's not for me. Not learning how to skin people here, I'm off.
Yeah, it's no good to me. I like shooting the guns, but the rest of it's boring. So in January 1979... Dahmer's father urged him to enlist in the US Army. So he completed his basic training at Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama, before training before training as a medical specialist at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, which, while I was researching this, I just kept thinking that's obviously where Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah,
or at least that's what I'm getting. I could be totally wrong.
I think it's... would I be right in saying NASA's in Houston?
Oh yeah, that's
I think it's to do with space and rockets and stuff.
So while he was stationed in Texas, he was occasionally reprimanded for intoxication. Shock and horror. On one occasion, he actually received a severe beating from his fellow recruits after an instance of insubordination from Dahmer resulted in punishment for his entire platoon. They obviously didn't like that.
No, of course not.
In July 1979, Dahmer was deployed to West Germany as a combat medic. He was described as an average or slightly above average soldier, but due to his alcohol abuse, his performance deteriorated, and by 1981, he was deemed unsuitable for military service. So he was given a plane ticket to anywhere in the world and honourably discharged because the military felt that his problems wouldn't impact his civilian life. They obviously didn't know he was a murderer.
And I suppose at this point,
they just knew he was an alcoholic.
Yeah. And he's only had one... Well, he's still a murderer, even though there's only one murder. But I mean, like, he's not been caught, or it's not a pattern. Either way, you've still murdered someone.
Yeah, but it hadn't become a pattern.
It's not, and it's not been apparent to anyone. Nobody knows.
Yeah. So Dahmer felt that he couldn't go home to his dad. So he chose to go to Miami Beach, Florida, because he was tired of the cold, he said. That's what he said to investigators later. I was tired of the cold.
Fair.
And wanted to live by his own means. He found a job at a delicatessen and rented a room in a nearby motel. But because he was an alcoholic, he spent most of his salary on alcohol and was quickly evicted from the motel for not paying. Now, at first, he spent his evenings on the beach as he kept his job until eventually in September 1981, I think it was, he phoned his father asking could he return to Ohio.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
That's his quick stint in Florida. Stint even, not stint. It's not medical equipment.
No.
So then, after returning to Ohio, Dahmer initially lived with his father and stepmother, and he insisted on being delegated numerous chores to occupy his time while he was in search of work. He continued to drink heavily, and only 2 weeks after his return, he was arrested for drunken disorderly conduct. Dahmer was fined $60 and given a suspended 10-day jail sentence. Now, my breathing there. Did you hear that?
No.
Big breath. Anywho, obviously Dahmer's father Lionel then tried to wean his son off of alcohol, but his attempts were unsuccessful. In December of 1981, Lionel and his wife, Dahmer's stepmother, sent Jeffrey to live with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin. Jeffrey's grandmother was the only family member who he displayed any affection towards, and they had hoped that her influence, as well as the change of location, might persuade Jeffrey to quit drinking, find a job, and live responsibly. A lot to expect just from a move.
Yep.
At first, Jeffrey's new living arrangements with his grandmother were harmonious. He went to church with her, undertook chores, actively looked for work, and he followed most of her house rules. With that said, though, he did continue to drink and smoke. In early 1982, Dahmer found a job as a phlebotomist at the Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center. He held this job for 10 months before he was laid off. Dahmer stayed unemployed for over 2 years then. During this time, he lived off of whatever money his grandmother gave him. So he was basically in a pocket money situation at the age of around 22.
Nice.
Not giving shade on that though, we've all been there.
Listen, we've all been broke.
There's the deafening laugh, I apologise.
We've all been broke. We've not all been secretly murdering people.
No,
we've all
that
been
part
broke.
we've managed to stay away from.
Yeah.
So not long before losing his job, Dahmer had been arrested for indecent exposure. On the 7th of August 1982 at the Wisconsin State Fair Park, he was seen to have exposed himself, quote, on the south side of the Coliseum, in which 25 people were present, including women and children.
Nobody want to see that.
No. For this incident, he was convicted and fined $50 plus court costs, which I suppose back then was probably a significant amount more than it is now. You know. And then in January of 1985, Dahmer was hired as a mixer at the Milwaukee Ambrosia chocolate factory. Here he worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 6 nights a week, with Saturday evenings off. Shortly after he found his job, Dahmer was propositioned by another man while he was sitting reading in the West Allis Public Library. The stranger threw Dahmer a note in which he offered to perform fellatio on him. Sneaky blowjob.
Sneaky blowjob in the library.
Although Jeffrey did not answer the proposition. This encounter stirred in his mind the fantasies of control and dominance he had developed as a teenager, and he began to familiarise himself with Milwaukee's gay bars, gay bathhouses and bookstores. Jeffrey is also known to have stolen a male mannequin from a store, which he briefly used for sexual stimulation, until his grandmother found it, stowed it in a closet, and demanded that he get rid of it. Ooh. Now, of all things, a mannequin.
I'm personally stuck on his nana finding it and knowing what it was for.
Well, does she know what it was for?
I don't know,
because I'm like, if I found a mannequin in someone's house, that's not the first thing I'd assume, simply because of the fact I can't wrap my head around how anyone would manage to get themselves turned on or get off to a mannequin. But I think, as is mentioned well later in, and it might even be in next week's episode, part 2, that's what's called paraphilia. I think. So it's like intense sexual attraction to something that people wouldn't typically be attracted to, or an object.
Who married her chandelier. There's a woman who married.
Oh yeah, there's also people who are apparently in relationship with Boeing 737 big toys. And I'm like,
my husband.
Wonder what the runway is, love. Wonder what the runway is.
I'd like you to meet my husband. He's up there.
Don't mind him. He's just a fly on the wall. So then, but I just can't get over some of this. And some of those examples as well.
Just like, Nana, he's my mannequin. He's my boyfriend. I love him. Don't make me throw him out.
And I'm like, how do you know if it's a male mannequin? Because they normally don't have
The women mannequin have boobies.
I'm so slow.
They have titties.
Yeah, I just completely disregarded the upper half.
Yeah.
That
was such a weird laugh.
By late 1985, Dahmer had begun to regularly go to the bathhouses, which he later described as being relaxing places. But during his sexual encounters, he became frustrated at his partners moving during the act. After his arrest, Dahmer stated, quote, "I trained myself to view people as objects of pleasure instead of as people," unquote. This was the reason that from June 1986 he administered sleeping pills to his partners by giving them liquor laced with sedatives. He would then wait for his partner to fall asleep before performing different sexual acts. In order to maintain a sufficient supply of this medication, Dahmer had informed doctors about how he worked nights and required the sleeping tablets to adjust to that schedule. After roughly 12 such instances, the Bathhouse's administration revoked Jeffrey's membership, and he began to use hotel rooms to continue this practice. Now, not long after his Bathhouse memberships were revoked, Dahmer read a newspaper report about an upcoming funeral of an 18-year-old man.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He came up with the idea of stealing the freshly buried corpse and taking it home. But according to Dahmer, upon attempting to dig up the coffin from the ground, he found the soil to be too hard, so he abandoned the plan. On the 8th of September 1986, Dahmer was once again arrested, this time on the charge of lewd and I don't know how to pronounce this, lascivious?
Lascivious, where is it?
Lascivious?
Point.
Lascivious or lascivious is one of the ones I would say. Behaviour for masturbating in the presence of two 12-year-old boys as he stood close to the Kinnickinnick River. At first, Dahmer claimed he had only been urinating, unaware that there were witnesses, but he soon admitted to the offence and the charge was changed to disorderly conduct, and on the 10th of March 1987, Dahmer was sentenced to 1 year of probation with the additional instructions to undergo counselling. And that is the end of that
I had to remove
little
my
part.
headphones again there just to process the fact that this man saw an obituary.
Yeah.
And said, I'm going to dig him up, take him home.
So they were seeing already the starts of a bit of necrophilia.
Yeah, like I knew he was a I knew he had some depraved things about him, but fucking hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, on November 20th, 1987, while Dahmer was living with his grandmother in West Allis, he rented a room at the Ambassador Hotel in Milwaukee. While out at a bar, he met 25-year-old Stephen Tuomi and persuaded him back to his room. Dahmer said that he had no intention of killing Stephen. He only intended to drug him and lie beside him as he explored his body. However, he woke the next morning and found Stephen lying beneath him on the bed. His chest was crushed in and he was black and blue with bruises. There was blood seeping from one corner of his mouth, and Dahmer himself had extensive bruises on his fists and one of his forearms. He claimed to have no memory of the attack and said he, quote, could not believe this had happened. Couldn't believe it. I've killed a man before, but I can't believe this. I can't remember it, so I must not have killed him.
And you know, the weird thing is, though, one of the things I saw is that, like, later on, we'll get into it somewhere, it's apparently the second killing that he doesn't remember, which is the one you've just... Was that... Yeah. What did you say the name was?
Stephen Tuomi.
Yeah. In later days, I think it's him, that murder, that he doesn't as clearly remember or remember much of.
He said he doesn't remember killing him at all. He remembers, like, meeting him in the bar. He remembers inviting him back.
But after that, it's a bit hazy. Yeah. So then, after the murder of... How did you pronounce it? Tuomi?
Tuomi.
Yeah. After the murder of Tuomi, Jeffrey began to actively seek out victims, most of which he encountered in or close to gay bars. Dahmer would typically lure these victims to his grandmother's home. Then he would drug his victim with either triazolam, a central nervous system depressant tranquilizer, or temazepam, a medication used to treat severe insomnia, before or shortly after engaging in sexual activity with them. Once he had his victim unconscious from drugging them, he would kill them by strangling them. Now, obviously, very different things, but I do not know how he's comfortable of obviously doing any of it in the first place.
Yeah.
But second of all, at your grandmother's house.
Literally, as you said it, I was like, in his nana's house.
I can barely imagine kissing a boy in my grandmother's house. Yeah. Don't mind
raping them.
Having a bit of some sexual deviancy and then being like, okay, bye-bye, dead.
Like, because
yeah. That's that noise you made sums it up. So then 2 months after the murder of Tuomi, Dahmer met a 14-year-old Native American male prostitute named James Dockstader. Now, one thing I want to say before I continue is I give no significance to the fact that he was a prostitute, because I always find that in the news and stuff like that, they use that in exactly, it's used in a derogative sense.
But especially back then.
Yeah.
People didn't choose prostitution, they were forced into it.
Or else, like...
poverty.
Yeah. But it's even the same nowadays. A lot of people that do, prostitution are doing it because it's the best way for them at the time to make money, or...
No, absolutely. It's the same as, like, in the Jack the Ripper case.
Most people don't choose it.
They had no choice. It was the only way for them to make money, to support themselves, because as we know, you cannot survive in this world if you don't have the means to support yourself. And
a lot of the time, even people who have significant means, it's still a struggle to get by.
And at that, he was 14. What 14-year-old is sitting around thinking, I'm gonna go into prostitution?
Yeah, like, have you even had sex ed yet?
Back then, definitely not.
Yeah. So, let's see, where was I? Oh yeah. So Jeffrey lured the young boy to his home by offering him $50 to pose for nude pictures. At Dahmer's West Allis residence, the two engaged in sexual activity before Dahmer drugged and strangled Dockstader on the floor of the cellar. Dahmer then left the body in the cellar for a week before he dismembered it in much the same way as he had with Tuomi. Dahmer then placed all of Dockstader's remains in the trash except for the skull. The skull was boiled and cleansed in bleach before Dahmer noted that the skull had been made too brittle by this process, so 2 weeks later he pulverised the skull because, in its state it was apparently no good for him. On the 24th of March 1988, Jeffrey met a 22-year-old bisexual man named Richard Guerrero. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
I think you are.
It's best I can do anyway. Outside of a gay bar called The Phoenix. Jeffrey lured Richard to his grandmother's, but this time he had offered $50 for Richard to just spend the rest of the night with him. Do you know, sounds innocent.
Yeah.
And as always, Dahmer drugged Richard with sleeping pills, then strangled him with a leather strap. Dahmer then performed oral sex on the corpse, and then dismembered Richard's body within 24 hours of murdering him, and again disposed of the remains in the trash, but kept the skull before pulverising it months later. On the 23rd of April, Jeffrey Dahmer once again lured another man to his house, but this time, after he had given his intended victim a drugged coffee, both he and the intended victim heard Dahmer's grandmother call out, "Is that you, Jeff?" Although Dahmer replied in a way that led his grandmother to believe he was on his own, she observed that Dahmer was not alone. Due to this, Dahmer decided not to kill this victim and instead waited until he'd become unconscious before taking him to the County General Hospital. So, thank God for Grandma, for his granny in that situation, for the intended victim. Now, in September of 1988, Dahmer's grandmother asked him to move out, mostly due to his drinking and habit of bringing young men to her house late at night, as well as the foul smells that would occasionally emanate from both the basement and the garage. Imagine being her when she finds out what he had done.
But was she still alive when he was arrested?
Now, that's what I'm wondering. I didn't check that out. So, Dahmer then found a one-bedroom apartment at 808 North 24th Street and moved into his new home on September 25th. 2 days after this, he was once again arrested, but this time for drugging and sexually fondling a 13-year-old boy who he had lured to his home under the guise of posing for nude photographs.
Was that by any chance Zombie?
I'm not sure, I didn't get a name.
It's a tricky one to pronounce. We'll get there.
Lionel Dahmer's father hired an attorney named Gerald Boyle to defend his son. At the request of Boyle, Dahmer underwent a series of psychological evaluation.
Josh, you know he doesn't like badge.
Evaluations prior to his upcoming court hearings. These evaluations revealed that Dahmer had deep feelings of social disconnect or social alienation. A second evaluation that was done 2 months later showed that Dahmer was an impulsive individual, that he was suspicious of others, and that he was also dismayed by his lack of accomplishments in life. Jeffrey's probation officer also referenced a 1987 diagnosis of Dahmer suffering from schizoid personality disorder for presentation to the court. On January 30th, 1989, Jeffrey Dahmer pleaded guilty to the charges of second-degree sexual assault and of enticing a child for immoral purposes. Sentencing for the assault was suspended until May. On the 20th of March, Dahmer began a 10-day Easter absence from work, during which he moved back into his grandmother's home. 2 months after his conviction and 2 months before his sentencing for the sexual assault, Jeffrey murdered his fifth victim, a mixed-race 24-year-old aspiring model named Anthony Sears, who once again he met at a gay bar on March 25th, 1989. According to Dahmer, this time he was actually not looking to commit any crime. However, not long before closing time that evening, Sears, quote, "just started talking to me," unquote. Jeffrey Dahmer then lured Sears to his grandmother's home, where they engaged in oral sex before Dahmer drugged and strangled Sears. So this time the oral sex, I suppose, was consensual, but the drugging and the strangling was not. In case that needed to be clarified.
That wasn't clear.
The next morning, Jeffrey placed the corpse in his grandmother's bathtub. Here he decapitated the body before attempting to skin the corpse. Dahmer stripped the flesh from the body and pulverised the bones, which he disposed of in the trash. According to Dahmer, he found Sears exceptionally attractive, and Sears was also the first victim that Dahmer permanently retained any body parts from. He preserved Sears' head and genitalia in acetone and stored them in a wooden box, and as you do, he later placed them in his work locker. When he moved to a new address the next year, he then obviously took the remains there with him. And then on the 23rd of May 1989, Dahmer was sentenced to 5 years probation and 1 year in the House of Correction with work release allowed in order that he be able to keep his job. Dahmer was also required to register as a sex offender.
And was this for the molestation of the young boy?
Yes.
So the name that I was thinking of wasn't Zombie, it was Somac.
Okay. And this was the young boy?
Yeah, I think this was him.
Yeah, because this boy never got killed or anything.
Yeah, but he is linked to another victim.
Oh, I know this.
Yeah, that you'll be covering. So is it my turn?
Nope, nearly there.
More, okay.
2 months before Dahmer's scheduled release from the work camp, he was paroled from this regime. His 5 years probation imposed in 1989 began at this point. So upon release, Dahmer temporarily moved back into his grandmother's home in West Allis. In May 1990, Jeffrey then moved into the Oxford Apartments located on 25th Street in Milwaukee. Although this was located in a high crime area, the apartment was close to his workplace, it was furnished, and it was only $300 a month, which included all bills except for electricity, making it very good value for money.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. I'm like, I'd risk getting stabbed on the daily for that.
Yeah, for that.
That's kind of...
Invest in good locks, you'd be fine.
Would you? Yeah, but go away. Nowadays, you'd still be looking at probably fucking $1,000 for that. Mm. It's like you might get stabbed when you walk out the door.
Just for a bedroom in the area, at least $1,000.
Probably. Well, I don't know, because I don't know the area, but if we're judging it based on Ireland. And now, over to you, my dude. My dudette.
My dudette. So on May 14th, 1990, Dahmer moved from his grandmother's house to 924 North 25th Street, apartment 213. He took Sears' mummified head and genitals with him. Within 1 week of moving in, he had already killed his 6th victim. Raymond Smith was a 32-year-old male prostitute, and like Josh said, any time we're doing a case like this, there is no judgment for anyone who's in the sex work industry.
It's just merely to use it as a description of what they were doing.
Yeah, whether it's personal choice or something that they've had no choice but to do, it's their choice, and we utterly respect it.
It's like, because I just don't like how, like a lot of the time when I hear people saying it in podcasts and stuff, there doesn't seem to be any, ill will or judgment.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time in newspapers or mainstream media, it comes across very judgmental, condescending, and just looking down on, like, it's not nice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they try to use it as a word that means it matters less, but it doesn't.
They try to use it in a derogatory way.
That's the one.
So Dahmer had lured Raymond to the apartment with the offer of $50 in exchange for sex. And once Raymond was inside the apartment, Dahmer slipped 7 sleeping pills into a drink and gave it to him.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, before strangling him. The next day, Dahmer went out and bought a Polaroid camera and used it to take several pictures of Raymond's body in suggestive positions before dismembering him in the bathroom. He boiled the legs, arms and pelvis in a steel kettle with Soilex, and he did this because it made it easier for him to rinse off the bones, so that he would just have the bones and he wouldn't have to deal with the organs and the skin and all of that other stuff.
And it's really weird the way, obviously, that Silex stuff works, because I know I mention it at some point as well, but the point I mention it in is he was actually using it for preservation. But I suppose he wasn't, I don't know, was he boiling for preservation?
Yeah, and I suppose with different strengths you'd probably get different effects.
Because I know when I looked up Silex, it is for removing tough stains, grease and things like that.
Lovely.
So, I guess...
We love a resourceful queen. Nice. Anyway, so Dahmer then dissolved the rest of Raymond's skeleton except for his skull in a container filled with acid. He spray painted Raymond's skull at a later date and put it next to Sears' skull on a black towel inside a metal filing cabinet. About 1 week later, on or around May 27th, Dahmer enticed another man back to his apartment. However, on this occasion, he mixed up the drinks.
Oh no, he drank it.
He drank the sedative laced.
Well, I don't know why I'm saying oh no.
Yeah. He drank...
I'm like, oh no for him, but oh yes for the other person.
So he drank the sedative laced drink himself, and when he woke up, he discovered that his would-be victim had stolen some of his clothes, $300 and a watch, to which I say...
Karma
go
is
on,
a
you
bitch.
good thing. Go on, you good thing.
And that wasn't nearly enough karma, but it's something.
So Dahmer obviously never reported this to the police.
Yeah.
But on May 29th, he did divulge to his probation officer that he had been robbed. In June 1990, Dahmer lured 27-year-old Edward Smith to his apartment, where he drugged and strangled him. This time, rather than immediately acidifying the skeleton or repeating other bleaching processes, he decided to try something new. because his old processes had made the victim's skulls brittle. So he tried putting Edward's skeleton in the freezer for a few months, hoping that it wouldn't retain moisture. However, this did not remove the moisture.
Yeah, because it's not going to remove it, it's just going to freeze it.
Yeah, it's not going to remove the moisture, it's not going to prevent it from retaining moisture. And as a result, the skeleton was acidified months later. When Dahmer tried drying Edward's skull out by putting it in the oven, it exploded.
He did what?
He tried drying out the skull.
In the oven?
In the oven, and it exploded.
Yeah.
He later said to police that he felt, quote, rotten about Edward's murder, as he hadn't been able to keep any of his body parts. That's why he felt rotten about it.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's the one.
That's the one. So less than 3 months later, after murdering Edward Smith, Dahmer met 22-year-old Ernest Miller outside a bookshop. Ernest agreed to go to Dahmer's apartment for $50 and so that Dahmer could listen to his heart and stomach. When Dahmer attempted to perform oral sex on Ernest, he was told, "That'll cost you extra," at which point Dahmer gave him a drink laced with 2 sleeping pills. Now, as he only had 2 sleeping pills to give Ernest, I'm assuming he was concerned that he would wake up. So Dahmer killed him by slashing his carotid artery with the knife that he usually used to dissect bodies. So this is a bit of a deviation from him strangling his victims, but it was because he'd only been able to give him 2 pills and he was concerned that he was going to wake up in the middle of the murder or in the middle of whatever.
He didn't want to have to fight to pin him down.
Yeah. So Ernest bled to death in mere minutes, and Dahmer posed his body nude for a variety of suggestive Polaroids before placing it in his bathtub and dismembering it. Now this is the point where after I finished this paragraph, I had to take a break. Because he repeatedly kissed and talked to Ernest's severed head as he dismembered his body. And then Dahmer wrapped Ernest's heart, biceps and portions of flesh from his legs in plastic bags and put them in the fridge so he could eat them.
Just in case he needs a midnight snack. That's disgusting.
Yep. He then boiled the remaining flesh and organs using Soilex, and to preserve the skeleton, he placed the bones in a light bleach solution, for 24 hours before allowing them to dry in a cloth for 1 week. The severed head was initially placed in the fridge before being stripped of flesh, painted, and then coated in enamel and stored with Sears and Smith's skulls. 3 weeks after Ernest's murder, on September 24th, Dahmer met 22-year-old David Thomas at the Grand Avenue Mall. He persuaded him back to his apartment for a few drinks and an offer to pay him to pose for photographs. Dahmer later stated to police that after drugging David, he didn't feel attracted to him, but he didn't want to wake him in case he was angry over being drugged, so he strangled and dismembered him anyway. But he intentionally didn't keep any of the remains. He did keep photos that he had taken during the dismemberment process, which did help in identifying David.
Yeah.
But because he wasn't attracted to him, he didn't keep any of his remains. After David's murder, Dahmer didn't kill anyone else for almost 5 months, but there were at least 5 occasions between October 1990 and February 1991 where he had failed attempts at luring men back to his apartment.
So he was trying,
but nobody was
not succeeding.
So throughout 1990, he spoke to his probation officer about feelings of anxiety and depression and harbouring suicidal thoughts, with frequent references to his sexuality, his solitary lifestyle and financial difficulties.
Okay.
So he seemed to have confided quite a bit in his probation officer. Obviously nothing about the murder.
Obviously nothing that would get him in more trouble or arrested.
But in terms of his mental health and other things that were going on in his life, he was very open about with him.
Oh, excuse me. It's so hot in here.
Do you want to open the window?
No, it's okay.
I'll just die of heat stroke.
It's fine.
I'm too polite.
So then we move on to 1991, and in February of 1991, Dahmer watched Curtis, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the surname right, Curtis Straughter, who was 17 years old, at a bus stop near Marquette University. According to Dahmer, like with other victims, he lured Curtis into his apartment with an offer of money for posing for nude photos, but with the added incentive of sexual intercourse. Dahmer drugged Curtis, cuffed his hands behind his back, then strangled him to death with a leather strap. Then he dismembered Curtis, keeping only the teen's skull, hands and genitals as he photographed again each stage of the dismemberment process.
Lovely. What a lovely hobby.
Yeah. What did you do today? Oh, I took a photography class.
Dismemberment.
On April 7th, less than 2 months later, Jeffrey Dahmer encountered Errol Lindsay, who was 19 years old and was walking to get a key cut. Errol was straight, heterosexual, whatever your preferred word is. Dahmer lured him. Dahmer lured, oh my god, I can't speak.
It's the headphones.
No, I'm just having difficulty with that word because I've said it so much. Lured Errol to his apartment where he drugged him and then he drilled a hole in Errol's skull and poured hydrochloric acid into it.
Oh my god.
According to Dahmer, Errol Lindsay actually woke up after this experiment saying, I have a headache, what time is it?
Oh my god.
Yes.
That... Give me a minute to process that, please. That is... I need to take the headphones off. That
is something else.
That is beyond fucked up. Like, everything he's done has been fucked up.
But, like, to him, this was an experiment. There's logic to it.
But, like... Oh my good god, like... I'm horrified.
I'm like, how did he wake up saying he had a headache and not screaming?
Oh, it probably destroyed certain...
Probably nerve endings and whatever.
Probably a miracle that he even woke up and said that.
Yeah. But you see, according to Dahmer, Dahmer had conceived this experiment in an attempt of inducing a permanent unresistant submissive state. So it wasn't actually his intention to kill this time. But then obviously it clearly didn't work. So Dahmer then drugged Errol again and strangled him. He decapitated Errol and kept his skull. Then he skinned the body, placing the skin in a solution of cold water and salt for a few weeks in the hope of keeping it permanently. And reluctantly then Dahmer ended up disposing of the skin when he noticed it had become too frayed and brittle.
I dissociated there for a solid 5 seconds. What did you say he was doing with the skin?
He kept it in a solution of cold water and salt for a few weeks in the hopes of permanently keeping it. But then obviously he noticed it had become too frayed and brittle, so he did dispose of it in the end. It gives me, do you know that one from Doctor Who vibes? Missed me.
Moisturize.
Yeah.
Moisturize me.
That one. Now, obviously by this time in 1991... other residents at the Oxford Apartments had repeatedly complained to the building's manager, Soap Princewell, about the foul smells coming from the apartment, specifically his apartment, 213, as well as the sounds of falling objects, and this one, and the occasional sound of a chainsaw.
Like, because the thing is, I watched the first 2 episodes of Dahmer, the TV show on Netflix.
The new one, I haven't started it yet. I was waiting until all this is done so that I can kind of see what I think of it.
I watched 2 episodes and then I was like, okay, I would like to be able to eat my dinner. So let's watch.
Yeah, I've heard it is very
gruesome.
Yeah.
And like there was a scene where his neighbour like got out of the bed late at night. And at first I didn't really click to what she was hearing, but like there was a vent in the wall between the 2 apartments. I don't know how true to life that is.
Okay.
But it kind of showed her walking towards the vent and you could hear a chainsaw. And she had also complained to him about the smell and he was making
Which if there was a
excuses.
vent, the smell would come through as well.
Yeah, because he was making these excuses in the show at least. Again, not sure.
I think I have some excuses in a minute.
He was saying, I had meat in my freezer that went bad. And she was like, okay, well that was a week ago, the smell should be gone by now. And then he was like, oh, my tropical fish died, they get this thing called
that's true.
Yeah, like, just fucking crazy shit. Like, imagine hearing chainsaws going off at all hours of the night at your neighbour's
in an apartment as well, so it's not like someone's in their garden cutting a tree at a weird hour.
With the chainsaw at like 9 o'clock at night, but he's just cutting wood for the fire.
And there's no like immediate neighbours here to noise pollute.
Yeah.
Like, when it's the arse in the nowhere in the Irish countryside.
Like.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh yeah. So Principal contacted Dahmer regarding the complaints on multiple occasions. At first, Dahmer excused the odours coming from his apartment, saying it was due to his freezer breaking, causing its contents to spoil.
There we go.
And on later occasions, he told Principal that the reason the smell had returned was because several of his tropical fish had recently died and that he would take care of the matter. Okay, I've never had tropical fish.
They get something called ick.
But I've had goldfish, and I have never known when they pass away to stink up a place to an extent of neighbours in an apartment block complaining.
If you walk into your sitting room or your kitchen or wherever you choose to keep your fish, it's a personal preference, and you notice that they're dead, do you not immediately take care of them?
Like, fair enough, sometimes you might not have time, you might have to run to work and then do it when you get home, but I can't see them being there long enough to make a smell in an apartment block.
You shouldn't have fish in the first place.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Now, on the afternoon of the 26th of May 1991, Dahmer met a 14-year-old Lao teenager. Yeah. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, I always say Laos, and I feel like you're probably more correct there.
Yeah, because it just says Lao.
Oh, well, I saw LAOS. So maybe it's Lao, and then if you're from there, you're Laos.
Maybe,
but anyway, sorry.
Teenager named Conorak Sitansamphone.
I was trying to figure out how to pronounce that earlier.
I googled it, and that's what it told me it was.
Syntasamphone.
So Syntasamphone on Wisconsin Avenue. Lao people are a Thai ethnic group native to Southeast Asia. Now, there's loads more information about that ethnic groups if you want to look it up. I probably have a resource in the episode description that links to that, so check it out if you want to know more. Now, Dahmer did not know that Syntasamphone was actually the younger brother of the boy who Dahmer had molested in 1988. Jeffrey Dahmer approached the teen with an offer of money to go with him to his apartment to pose for Polaroid pictures, and according to Dahmer, Syntasamphone was reluctant at first, but then changed his mind and went with Dahmer to the apartment. At the apartment, Conorak posed for 2 pictures in his underwear before Dahmer drugged him into unconsciousness and performed oral sex on him. Before Conorak passed out, Dahmer led the boy to the bedroom where the body of 31-year-old Tony Hughes, an aspiring model that Dahmer had killed 3 days earlier, lay naked on the floor. Dahmer later said that he believed that Conorak saw this body, but did not react to seeing the bloated corpse, most likely due to the effects of the sleeping pills Dahmer had drugged him with. Now, this time, Dahmer drilled 1 narrow hole into the crown of Conorak's skull, and he injected hydrochloric acid into the frontal lobe through this narrow hole. Then Dahmer drank multiple beers while lying beside Conorak before briefly falling asleep. Then he left his apartment to drink at a bar and to purchase more alcohol. So just to recap, Dahmer led Conorak to his apartment on the afternoon of May 26th, and now in the early hours of May 27th, so you could say, you know, it's could even be considered late at night of the 26th. But anyway, early hours of May 27th, as Dahmer was on his way back to the apartment after his little alcohol run, he came across Conorak sitting naked on the corner of 25th and State, talking in Lao, with 3 distressed young women standing near him. Dahmer went up to the women and told him that Conorak, who Dahmer referred to as John Hmong,
just give him a new name, that's fine.
Yeah, was his friend, and he attempted to lead him back to his apartment by the arm, but the 3 women persuaded Dahmer not to and explained that they had already phoned 911. So prepare to be pissed off, people.
I feel like I know where this is going. Go on.
So on the arrival of 2 Milwaukee police officers, John Balcerzak and Joseph Gabrish, Dahmer's demeanour relaxed. He told the officers that Conorak, who he called John, was his 19-year-old boyfriend, that he drank too much alcohol following an argument, and that he often behaved this way when intoxicated. Dahmer also added that his lover had consumed Jack Daniel's whiskey that evening.
Okay, it was the Jack Daniels that did it to him.
Yeah. The 3 women were understandably frustrated that both the officers had not observed any injuries apart from a scrape to Conorak's knee, as well as believing he was intoxicated.
Let me guess. Let me just take a wild guess here. They believed Dahmer, and they let him take him back.
We're getting there.
Yeah,
And when one of them tried to indicate to the officers that Conorak had blood on his testicles, was bleeding from his rectum, and that he seemingly struggled against Dahmer's attempts to walk him back to the apartment prior to the arrival of the police officers, the officer harshly told her, "Butt out," and then another one, "Shut the hell up," and to not interfere. Not long after the arrival of the Milwaukee police officers, 3 members of the Milwaukee Fire Department arrived at the scene. The members of the fire department also examined Conorak for injuries and provided a yellow blanket for the police officers to cover Conorak because, again, he was naked. One of the 3 believed that Conorak did need treatment, but the police officers told the fire department personnel to leave. A little after this... Yeah, so one of the fire people obviously were saying, bring him to the hospital, get him started. And the police were just like, fuck off.
Literally arguing with these 2 police officers.
At least one of them was, anyway.
Out.
Yeah, and just being told, shut up, butt out, fuck off, basically.
He's got scratches. He's resisting against going with this man. He's clearly afraid. And the police are like, oh, but this white man, this white blonde man has said this is his 19-year-old lover.
There's definitely
we're going to believe him
racial bias
over
here.
The Asian man, over this young Asian man who's clearly
distressed. Not with the program.
Not with the program because he's just.
And how did nobody find the hole drilled in his head if they examined him?
The stupidity, the absolute, and it's not even stupidity. It's willful ignorance.
Oh yeah.
Absolute willful ignorance. Go on, annoy me more. Go on.
So obviously, after the police had told the fire department personnel to leave, not too long after that, Officer Richard Porubkan arrived at the scene. Porubkan and Gabrish, followed by Balcerzak, escorted Dahmer and Conorak to Dahmer's apartment, as Dahmer commented repeatedly on the general crime in the neighbourhood and of his appreciation of the police. So let's just do a bit of lick arsing while we walk back, just to seal the deal. Now, wait for it, gets worse. Once inside his apartment, let's remember that there's still the bloated body on the floor in the bedroom. So once inside his apartment, Dahmer attempted to verify his claim that he and Conorak were lovers by showing officers the 2 semi-nude Polaroid pictures he had taken of the youth the previous evening. Yeah. So I suppose that helped him in that moment as well, even though they seemed to be listening to him and believing him anyway.
But of all the if I was trying to prove that my boyfriend was my boyfriend, I would be showing pictures that we've taken on days out.
But I suppose back then, nudes were less of a thing, were they not? So if you have nudes of someone, it's obviously very personal, whereas nowadays, we'll send it to anyone, really. Go Snapchat.
I'm not even sent my boyfriend nudes, bless him.
I'm not commenting on this topic because I don't want to slut shame myself.
I'm pleading the fifth.
Yes. I plead the Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination.
This is my boyfriend. Here's some semi-nude pictures we took earlier.
Yeah.
And the police were like,
okay.
Lovely, congratulations.
Cute.
There you go, I'll help you carry him to your fucking murder room.
So, the semi-nude Polaroids. So Balcerzak said that he had smelled nothing unusual, but Gabrish later stated that he noticed a strange scent inside the apartment that reminded him of feces. The odour would have been coming from the decomposing body of Hughes that was still in the bedroom of the apartment. Dahmer later stated that to investigate this odour, one officer only, quote, peeked his head around the bedroom but really didn't take a good look. The officers then decided to leave, remarking, so looked in quickly, but obviously not enough to see a dead body on the floor.
Would the smell not have gotten stronger?
Who cares?
He was just like, he probably shit the bed.
Who knows? Honestly. But wait for this pissed me off as well. The officers then decided to leave, remarking that Dahmer, quote, take good care of Conorak as they were leaving, and then the incident was listed by the officers as a domestic dispute.
I'm speechless.
Yeah. Ridiculous, carry on. Now, after the 3 officers departed Dahmer's apartment, he again injected hydrochloric acid into Conorak's brain. So this is the second time, and this second injection was fatal. The next day, May 28, Dahmer took a day of leave from work in order to give himself time to dismember the bodies of Conarack and Tony. Once again, he kept the skulls of his victims. On the 30th of June, Dahmer travelled to Chicago, where he encountered Matt Turner, who was 20 years old, at a bus station. Once again, Dahmer made an offer, but this one was different to previous offers. Matt accepted Dahmer's offer to travel to Milwaukee for a professional photo shoot. With a Polaroid camera, is it, love?
Yeah, because he's a professional photographer.
Once at the apartment, Dahmer drugged, strangled and dismembered Matt Turner and put his head and internal organs into separate plastic bags in the freezer, and Matt was not reported missing. On July 5th, only 5 days later, Dahmer lured another victim to his apartment, 23-year-old Jeremiah Weinberger, who he met in a bar in Chicago. Dahmer had told Jeremiah they could spend the weekend together, and Dahmer then drugged Jeremiah and this time injected boiling water through his skull twice. This sent Jeremiah into a coma and he died 2 days later. On the 15th of July, Dahmer met Oliver Lacey, who was 24 years old, and he met him at the corner of 27th and Kilbourne. Oliver agreed to Dahmer's ruse of posing nude for photographs and accompanied him to his apartment, where they engaged in tentative sexual activity before Dahmer drugged Oliver. This time, Dahmer had actually planned to prolong the time he spent with Oliver while he was still alive. But after an unsuccessful attempt at rendering Oliver unconscious with chloroform, he phoned his work to request a day's absence. This was approved, but the next day Dahmer was suspended. After Dahmer strangled Oliver, he had sex with the corpse before dismembering him. He put Oliver's head and heart in the refrigerator and his skeleton in the freezer. On July 19th, which was 4 days later, Dahmer found out he was fired, and after hearing this news, he lured Joseph Braidhoft to his apartment. Joseph was 25 years old, and Joseph was strangled and left lying on Dahmer's bed covered with a sheet for 2 days. On the 21st of July, Dahmer removed the sheet to find the head was covered in maggots. He then decapitated the body, cleaned the head, and then placed it in the refrigerator. Later, he acidified, or you could say dissolved, Joseph's torso along with those of the 2 other victims he had killed in the last month. And that concludes that section, which was the 1991 killings, yes?
Yeah. And then I think, did we say we were going to stop it
here? Are we going to... Is that where we're stopping?
Because the next section
think it is.
Capture.
It's the capture, is it? Yeah, and then for me it's the confession. So we're going to...
Well, I'm still processing.
Yeah, like, I'm kind of... With all of this, I just don't even know what to say.
Like, don't get me wrong, everything he did to all of his victims was absolutely
But there was a chance for Conarack to be saved.
But as well, it's the fact that, like, not only did he do what he did to Conarack, he molested his brother. So he's destroyed
one family twice.
First time molesting.
Like, obviously, yeah, it wasn't intentional. He didn't know they were related. If he did, he might have avoided, because you don't want to... Because he got charged with the previous... With the...
Then, like, the police, just those 2 officers...
But, like, was that not on his record? Like, could they not have, like, checked? I know now technology wouldn't be the same as it is now, where they can just whip out their phone, type in a name, or like get a system up.
But even, like, when they got back to the station, they could have, like, gone... Like,
ran the name.
Maybe I should run his name. But, like, clearly
Seeing
they were
what
too
happened,
incompetent. And I hope they never get a moment's peace again.
As far as I know, they were fired.
Good.
I don't know when or how long after this, but I think a few of them, if not all of them, were fired.
But yeah, what was it? John Ballbag and...
I don't know, because to be honest,
Giblish.
Even their surnames are...
Oh, I know his surname.
Weird.
I'll just choose to refer to him as John Ballbag.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is I just don't, like, even through that, out of all the names I make sure to try and pronounce right, I couldn't frankly give a flying fuck how I pronounce theirs.
Ballbag.
Because I just don't see, regardless of the time it was, or the, you know, the year, I just don't understand how that wasn't copped. No. And that could have been the end of it.
It could have been.
Because there was already way too many. One is too many.
One is way too many, and then... look, that's part 1.
That is part one.
We're going to cap it at that for part 1. In part 2, we will cover his
confession,
how he got caught, his confession, the trial, and the aftermath.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. And so the next episode, there is a few long sections,
but it should be shorter than
but
this.
it might not be quite as long as this episode. But who knows with us? Who knows?
We do tend to go off on rambles.
And that is basically the murders and everything covered up until him getting caught. So
that is part 1 of the Jeffrey Dahmer case.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you for bearing with the new equipment.
Yeah, I give up on the headphones. I haven't had them on for the last 45 minutes, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I pushed through and now I'm used to it and I prefer it.
I think it's the ADHD for me. I just get very distracted by my voice bouncing back at me. Even though there is a little bit of delay, it still impacts me going into the next sentence, I found. And also I feel like I sound like I'm emotionless, and I don't want to sound like I'm emotionless given the topics that we're covering.
Yeah, I think it benefits me because I have to think more about talking.
You do
so
talk
then I slow down
faster than I do. Like the way the speed at which you talk is perfect for my brain because of the ADHD and things. But in terms
anyone
of
who knows me is able to keep up with me, but people who aren't used to me
I've
probably cannot all the time keep up with me.
We've known each other for 15 years. I just realised. I've been listening to you and you've been listening to me for 15 years.
Oh my god. Story, not to do with us, just I remembered it.
Okay.
You know how we were saying about how a part of the case, what was it, about pretending something was a prescription or something like that?
Oh, the sleeping pills. When he was getting the sleeping pills, or to do with his mother's prescription?
No, I'm not sure what it was. I think... Remember, and I said about bringing the vodka to school.
Oh, when he was bringing his drink to school under his jacket.
Yeah.
And he said it was his medicine. His
medicine, there we go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
That reminds me, actually, when I was in, I don't know, was I in juniors or senior infants, right?
Jesus.
I think seniors, probably.
Go on.
But I used to come out of class for a while and go to, like...
Resource?
Is that what it was called?
Like extra help in certain subjects,
Yeah, so I'd go to that, and...
Because you were thick?
I think it was just because I couldn't concentrate in class.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Early signs of mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I... Obviously, that was back in the day where everyone was obsessed with Tic Tacs.
Yes.
I put Tic Tacs into a medicine thing,
case.
And I used to just take them whenever I wanted in class. And when the teacher asked me about it, I was like, "Oh no, it's my medicine. I have to take it." And she believed me. I only ended up getting caught because just chilling in class, eating Tic Tacs every now and then, just popping a Tic Tac and passing it off as medication. And the only reason I ended up getting caught was because I didn't have that many Tic Tacs one day, and I refused to give one to one of the lads, so they did the rat.
They were like, right, you won't share your Tic Tacs. I'm telling the teacher you're not actually on medication.
Should have been, but wasn't.
Should have been medicated. I never did anything like that, but I know when I was like getting ready to get my communion, back when I was Catholic.
Getting all excited for that bread. Let's get that bread.
So I used to practice taking my first Holy Communion.
Shut the front door.
With those giant Milky Way buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember being up at Davy Conroy's shop. It's top of town. And I must have looked like a little fucking psycho to anyone going past. Cause,
you still do?
Yeah, I do.
Same.
Dad got in to pay for petrol or diesel or whatever. And I was just sitting in the car with my little packet of buttons.
Body of Christ.
Literally, this is the body of Christ. Amen.
I'm going to have to try and minimise that laugh because I actually hurt myself. You're lucky you don't have the headphones on.
So yeah, there you go guys. Some little anecdotes from our fucked up childhoods.
Some tip of the iceberg.
Taking the body of Christ,
and I was on prescription Tic Tacs.
Prescription Tic Tacs.
Oh, would you stop? Actually, they'd have been fairly expensive if they were prescription.
Anyway,
there'd have been no refill.
Anyway, hopefully that's a bit of a lighter tone to end this on than what we've been talking about.
Yes.
We are going to go and record part 2.
And
enjoy.
Yes, so make sure to join us next week for capture, confession, trial, a bit more about the victims. Only a little bit because we couldn't find a whole lot.
Yeah.
But anywho.
So there you go. Hope you all sleep well tonight after that. Well, it's Monday night after that.
Yes.
And we will speak to you soon.
Bye bye for now.
Bye.
See you next week.